Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the state of Colorado and Governor Jared Polis, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our great state. And it's wonderful to see so many of our Colorado folks from across the state who are here participating in this conference the next few days. We are about to see firsthand the ways in which we inspire one another and the collective, collaborative arts experiences that we create in our great state. And so I'd like to, they're here. Oh my gosh. All right. Welcome to the stage. Oh, they're so quiet. So, but they won't be for long. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Suzi Q. Smith, poet, spoken word artist, and activist. Bruce Odland, composer, sound artist, and sonic thinker. I'm not supposed to turn away from the mic. Sonic thinker. Stephen Malloy Brackett, Colorado music ambassador, who is a speech language mythologist. And Garrett, Ammon, artistic director and choreographer for Wonderbound. And you are about to have your socks blown off. So welcome, and I'll let you take it from here.
During senior year of high school, a boy that I grew up with was shot at a local shopping mall. The next day at school, a girl I had never spoken to approached me, concern in her brow, asking sweetly, "How's your friend?" I was moved by her empathy. An exotic bird in a beige land of suburban track houses, I answered, "He's still in critical condition, but we're all praying. My grandmother is down at the hospital now." She, head bobbing hair flip, smile shifting into quiet knife, replied, "Well, I still say if he was a gang member, he deserved to get shot." This poem is for Michelle Albright and What We Deserve. You deserved both of my hands around your throat that day and the shaking I gave you. You probably still live in some suburb somewhere in a house just like the one you grew up in. You are probably married to an insurance agent who played high school ball and still reminisces when he drinks too much on the weekends. You are probably a banker, one of those predatory mortgage lenders that gets rich by manipulating poor people. You probably have 2 kids who look exactly like you. You probably think that they deserve the best. Michelle, you never knew Cedric, never saw the bruises he or his sister wore to Sunday school. Never tried not to fall asleep in the all-night prayer sessions the adults in our families held in hopes of protecting them from their stepfather. Never prayed for him to get saved. You never curled inside the kindness of their mother, never grew roots in the forest of her song. You did not come to our reunions or revivals, never heard the desperation in our melody. You have never been unable to afford the arrogance of your godlessness, Michelle. You never saw Cedric smile. You never tried to beat him in a foot race. You never wept or prayed for him. You never knew why his manhood was so urgent or why it cost him so much blood to achieve. Michelle, I want you to know that he did survive, and that when he recovered, he reclaimed his manhood the only way he knew how, that he was 17 when they locked him away for good, and that the last time I saw him was at his mother's funeral. We were 18 then. They did not unshackle his hands nor his feet as he rattled to the pulpit to read a poem he had written for his dead mother, and all I could think about was you and what you said he deserved, Michelle. I still see his aunties and uncles and cousins sometimes. He is his family's phantom limb, but I know better than to stare or talk about it. My family has missing teeth of its own, Michelle. I'm a mother now, and every night when I listen at my daughter's door, I can tell through the door the difference between awake breathing, asleep breathing, and awake pretending to be asleep breathing. I have kissed her head and toes, cleaned her messes, read her books, wrote her lullabies, taught her to ride a bicycle and to swim, helped with homework, talked down teachers, spoken to the mothers of bullies, spoken to bullies, prayed and prayed and prayed. Michelle, I taught her to read. I taught her to speak up, even to me. I have washed and matched her socks over and over again, have had to send her out into a world that does not value her life, that would tell her something about inferiority and it belonging to her, about her body and identity and it belonging to them, that pretends that black lives are not as carefully cultivated as white lives, as if she is not the most loved child that has ever lived. Michelle, I wonder what you think she deserves, Michelle. I know Cedric's mother felt the same way about her son that I do about my daughter. Michelle, what do you teach your babies? Michelle, do you know what a victim is? Do you think they always look like you? Michelle, have you ever felt like a statistic? Michelle, do you know they make whole juries just like you? Michelle, do you know the smack of a gavel can crack a spirit in half? Michelle, do you have a spirit? Michelle, we all deserve better than this. Even you. Good morning. Thank you. Welcome to Denver. My name is Suzi Q. Smith, and I am a poet. It's my honor to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. My time is brief, so I decided to just dive right in, right? So it's like over morning breakfast, let's have this chat. So I believe very, very deeply in the power of words, the way that they affect us, the weight that they have when we hold them, right? So I'm sure I'm not the only person who's had someone say something awful to us, and then we decide how we want to respond way after they're gone. And so that gives birth to many of my poems, including the one that you just heard. I also believe in systems of power, right? And the power that words have to shift those. Also considering the relationship between power and words and who decides whose stories get shared, whose words we hear, right? And so all of those things inform my work. And much of that can get heavy from time to time and even discouraging. So I wrote this piece in a time when I needed to remember my power. Some of you may have heard this before, and if you know it, feel free to sing along. I am a sleeping giant. There lives a riot in my bones. I am a mouthful of seed. I am a quiet indigo dawn. Feeling rhythmic this morning? Can you help me hold that? If you're not rhythmic, naturally, that's fine. Nod ahead silently, just, you know, like this. It's wonderful, right? Sometimes hope's the only space between your face and a hard rock, and prayer's the only major in the school of the hard knocks. Blisters on my feet from seeking, walking for blocks, but I can tell the light from shadow, hear the truth when it talks. I'm so moved, I remove both of my shoes. I shake out the rocks, embrace myself for the walk, and it's a long road, but my spirit is ready. I'm laying down my armor 'cause it's gotten too heavy. I am a sleeping giant. There lives a riot in my bones. I am a mouthful of seed. I am a quiet indigo dawn. The only real constant in my life is me. I change lanes and change pace, still in the driver's seat. Slay demons, smash walls when they're blocking me. Hiding weapons in the words while I'm looking for peace. I said my peace, I hold my peace. I seek the east for new horizons. I'm climbing, crying while and trying to find the highest. Dying to find the light beyond the brightest. I try to be that beacon you've been seeking. I'm dispelling all the shadows. The sun, the moon, the stars commune to show you where the light goes. How the wind blows and the earth turns and the river runs and the fire burns. And I'm still here. I'm still now, like lightning is urgent and thunder is loud. And here's a point where the giant wakes up, yeah? These old winds stirring up the ground around me. Some said freedom must have come and found me. I've been breaking up what bound me around here so I can breathe. I am a sleeping giant. There lives a riot in my bones. Thank you very much, and please welcome Bruce.
So she's not getting back up again. Thank you. I'm listed as a sonic thinker, and the first thing I think is, how's the sound in here? Is it sounding okay? Need more front fill for the speakers here? You good? Everybody good? So I'm going to tell you about and show you about and spill some sound into the room about two projects. The first, when I was just out of college, I came to Colorado and I was lured into this thing called the Chautauqua Tour in 1976. And that was an amazing thing. You know what? We need to have a video of these things that I want to show people instead of me. You'll just have to imagine you can see me. And I've got a few things I'd like to show on the big screen. Here it comes. Right. It was the 70s, you know. And take a look at this tour, 18 towns in it went all summer long. And it ended up in Rangeley, Colorado. We had 60 artists, and we visited mainly towns that hadn't had any live performances since the vaudeville days. 60 artists in a big tent can really melt down a small town, especially when everybody's participating and collaborating. And it was frankly an experience that inspired me for a lifetime of work, not thinking that culture was somewhere else. It's right here. It's right with us. And that tour planted a lot of seeds that have sprouted into interesting things over the years in different towns across Colorado. And so, it keeps flashing back to, there we go. Okay. I was talking over this more recently with Jesse Elliott, and up at the Music District about a year ago, reminiscing about, that was Jesse on the right, reminiscing about the Colorado Chautauqua. And I had just worked on a Hamlet 360 virtual VR immersive environment, an hour-long thing, and I put the goggles on him, and when he took them off, he said, "We got to talk." And this was, he was fresh from doing his Detour project with Music District and supported by Bohemian Foundation, and he recognized that there was a similarity between these projects many, many years later. So we cooked up something. We cooked up tour. I drew a spiral on a piece of paper and said, what if we went around Colorado and visited all these spots with modern gear where we could really show and record and demonstrate what a place is really like, the relationship between people, place, community, music. And if we took a tour around all those places, we could do something pretty amazing. And this depends upon some technology that really tells you about place. Now here, the whole project is going round because sound is round. Sound isn't over there, it's all around us. Maybe you look at something, but when you're hearing 24/7, a sphere all around you. You have this hunter-gatherer sense of hearing that can wake up at certain times. So this project is going into the Dome in Fort Collins, and on Thursday night, you can see it in the round, but right now, I'm going to trick you into pretending that we're in the round, and we're going to start to hear it in the round. And imagine you're in a dome, and everything is surrounding you, and you're hearing things. This is Joe's, Colorado, where one of the previous detours went, and the beautiful sound of the river, and this whole tour started in Joe's. And it's all about hearing, and rather than having me tell you what I think about hearing, how important it is, how it could save us, because this hunter-gatherer skill that let our ancestors survive could also maybe help us survive the visual thinking that's got us in this bind. Just close our eyes. What's going to happen? Could be interesting. So, next, let's hear from all the collaborators. If seeing is believing, what is hearing?
It's feeling.
So if seeing is believing, what is hearing?
Hearing is connecting. Dreaming.
Flowing. Knowing.
The truth.
A silence in space.
Hearing is movement.
Creating realities.
Hearing is connecting.
Also believing?
I would say feeling.
Hearing is understanding.
Witnessing?
Remembering.
I think hearing is experiencing.
Experiencing sometimes what you don't see.
You go through life hearing and you don't think about it much.
It's just undescribable.
Ask yourself whether seeing is believing.
So hearing is more about understanding your own perception regardless of what you're being shown and what you see.
So those were some of the voices all around the state, this marvelous state with so many different ecosystems, so many different ways to make a living, so many different communities. And at each stop, we found a place, and our collaborator, our musician, found that place and kind of sniffed it and felt it, and whatever music came up out of that place is what we recorded. And then in order to tie it all together like a mosaic, we ended up taking it all to the tank. We'll get to that. Here's a few of the people. First, Russick Smith in Breckenridge. Whoops, no, there's Jesse again. How about that? Okay. Here we go into the tank. As you might have guessed, Russick is also a mariner and works in tall ships. So here is the choir in Trinidad, members of the Trinidad Chorus, and none of us had any idea what would happen here, but as you can see, when it's all transported to the tank, it turns into something quite marvelous.
Somebody can go high too. Go up to the high D. That's the A. There it is.
So next, from Rangeley, and just it's worth pausing to just mention how this crazy idea from 1976, where I first encountered the tank, has spawned a Center for Sonic Arts that's known all over the country. People come and record there with these marvelous acoustics. It's people travel even from Europe to come there, and it's a really interesting to see, say, for instance, a Pulitzer Prize-winning composer sitting down for coffee with an oil engineer. And these are real, it smashes your bubble. It pops your bubble to just be together with people who would normally disagree. And as Elaine Urey, who built our road, and she started her own church, she owns a trucking company, and she said, I'll build your road, and did it for free. So we can go beyond this, and we can do things together. It's a living example of that. It's quite amazing. So Samantha Wade lived across from the tank and snuck in and sang there, and she'd come with our tanksters and learn. And now she has become our resident engineer. She's going to conferences representing women in technology, and she has a very special take on things. Just giving you little snatches of things. And now here it all comes together in the tank as these strands of culture weave together, come together, and form a collaborative group. None of these people heard each other playing, but this is how it's starting to turn out. And as we have more production time, because this is like just finished rendering yesterday, so I'm going to give you a little snatch, and we're going to see the tank from an unusual point of view. Here come the drones. Okay, so that's Rangeley. That's BLM land, and there's our place. 65 feet tall, industrial accident. This is the sound of a river at the confluence playing a stringed instrument, and now inside the tank. Them before. So I want to invite you to come up to Fort Collins, to the Dome on Thursday night and see it in the round. And in the meantime, don't forget to think with your ears.
Hello, I'm Garrett, Ammon, Artistic Director of Wonderbound.
And I'm Stephen Brackett, MC in Flowbots and Special Director of Youth on Record.
Wonderbound is a contemporary ballet company with a mission to use dance to deepen humankind's common bond through uncommon endeavors of discovery and creation.
Flowbots is a social justice band that has full live instrumentation and a message about uplift, and also we're really about collaboration. So just so you can know that this is for real, Suzi Q, the song that she just shared, was a song that we also took to the streets and taught as a protest song all over the country. She was also on our album that was featured in Divisions. Bruce, we actually went to Rangeley and recorded with his community in Rangeley at the Tank, and collaboration is what we're all about.
And we're all about collaboration as well. There were also, on his video, there was also Tom Hagerman, who's one of Wonderbound's collaborators, as well as Chimney Choir, who's one of Wonderbound's collaborators. That's one of the things that makes Denver so special. I mean, the deep community of collaboration and the willingness to share is really what inspired my wife and I when we moved here in 2007. We quickly discovered this incredible community, and we said, we have to work with these people. So we immediately started creating all of our shows around collaboration. And then we started to learn more about the music scene here and fell in love with the music scene here. And while it was our first big full-length collaboration was with the band Paperbird. And the show is called Carry On. And that's where I first met Stefan. Stefan came to a rehearsal for Carry On at our studios at the time up in Broomfield.
And I was just blown away. I think so often when you're grinding and you're doing your own thing as a band, the last thing in the world that you think that you could ever do is like do a ballet. You're too busy like playing in clubs that often reek of smoke and depression and all these other things, but you're still killing it. You're still killing it, right? So when I saw what they were doing with Paper Bird, like, I thought it was incredible. And I had that like deep-seated, often unspoken artistic jealousy. I'm just like, yeah, that's great. I'd love to do that sometime. But also in my mind, I was like, man, my band is like, I don't think there's any way that we could be ready. We're not ready for this kind of collaboration.
Well, and when Stefan first walked into the studio, the dancers all turned and they were like, that's Brer Rabbit. That's Brer Rabbit from the Flowbots. So I immediately was like, wow, it would be really amazing to work with Flowbots one day. But we're so not ready to work with a platinum-selling recording artist. We're just not there. So, but what happened out of that was we created the show Carry On with Paperbird. And Paperbird asked all of their musician friends to take that music that had been created and then remix it in different ways. And Flowbots went a step further, and they took samples from that show and integrated it through their entire new album, A Circle in the Square. And at that time, Bonfils Stanton Foundation was helping Wonderbound transform from Ballet Nouveau Colorado into Wonderbound. That's a whole different story. But we were looking to create some flash mobs to help kind of introduce the new vision for our organization into the community. And so we were like, oh my gosh, we're gonna use these songs from this album that Flowbots had made, using samples from Carry On, and then create these flash mobs with it. And so at that point, somewhere in there, so that was like 2014, somewhere around there, 2013, 2014, we finally looked at it, we sat down together and said, why haven't we done this yet? Right? And so we said, okay, well, it's time to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember seeing YouTube footage of the flash mob when you had everybody dancing, wearing these red rabbit masks to our song, and I was like, oh my goodness, he sees us.
Well, and so I think one of the interesting things about this process of deciding to come together, it's not, I don't think ballet and hip hop are necessarily the first thing that you would think of, oh, we should do this thing together. And I would also say that we're coming from really different worlds and kind of ultimately kind of journeying toward a place together. I've never thought of myself as an activist within my art. And so I was kind of intimidated by that. And so when we started talking about it, the place that we found a commonality and really kind of jumped off from was community, of saying, looking at our community and how much we love community, but also at the time we were leading toward the election, and this show was going to happen in 2016, and we were watching our world become divided in these really dramatic ways. And we felt like we really needed to speak to that in this show. And Flowbots were in the midst of creating a new album.
And the album that we were working on, because we'd spent so many years, in some ways, like sitting in our basements coming up with things, we thought like, no, we really need to communicate. So we spent the first year of the album actually going all over the country and teaching protest movements to reintegrate song. Use that as a piece of technology that we had fallen out of practice with. And most of the songs that are on the album that we generated came from the streets first. So like the song Sleeping Giant with Suzi Q. Like we were listening to where the pain was, and we were trying to write songs about that pain. And so in the same way, like we did not necessarily feel like we had much to contribute to the dialogue of ballet in a typical form, but I think both of us being receptive to like what is going on now, how do we actually listen to the pain that's happening in the world, and let's just speak to what it's like to be in that moment. And so what that resulted in is like, what was it? Almost a year before Trump was even like a serious candidate, we had to come up with a title for the show. So I was just like, Divisions. Had no idea. So by the time that the show actually happened, we were in the thick of things. But it was one of those things, I think it was kind of indicative that we were really sitting in a place of receptivity with what was going on, that name ended up being so perfect.
Well, and I think ultimately what we were trying to comment on was the idea of divisions between people and how that affects us as individuals, as humans, as people in relationships together. Rather than, we weren't trying to make any like political statement or anything. It was just really trying to comment on how this can affect each other, and exploring the struggle and pain of navigating your way through that. So one thing that we're excited about is we're bringing this show back this season. So in about how many months?
Oh, don't ask me, man.
4 or 5 months. That's really thrilling to be able to revisit it and re-explore it in a new way. So that's a little bit about what we've done together.
Yeah. And one of the beautiful things is that we didn't have to step back on any of our messaging. Like we went into the ugliness, we went into the heart of where some of this came from all of these black men and women who were being shot down and all of these things. We were able to speak all of that, but when we paired it so beautifully with this messaging, we found an audience that was receptive to the pain. And so that taught like both of us like what you can actually do when you actually try to set forth something to communicate. All right, thank you.
Thank you.